with this principle already, even as a secular individual.
You know, I was just going to say, sometimes I wonder why there's so much fighting about religious dogma. Because I was listening to what you said and I was thinking, it's funny, there wasn't a single thing that I would have disagreed with. Similar, I would say, and you would agree, that there's plenty of discussion around similar topics in other books, philosophies, speeches, whatever, outside of Islam. The only thing I didn't agree with, obviously, was the heaven and hell part, which doesn't fit into a second.
If you consider in our particular belief system, where justice is paramount, so there are people here in this life, they live their life, their justice being violated by other individuals, and those other individuals may be like drug lords and kings and whatever. They live their life and they get away with this injustice. Get away with the injustice. And the person who has been suffering these things, they die and they don't see the justice done. Okay? Even the concept of justice demands that they don't get away, these wicked people don't get away, and the people who are injustice done towards, they're actually seeing the justice meted out to the people, and for them what injustice have been done, that's been rectified. So the day of judgment, what we say, is a necessity from the demands of justice itself. We believe in it, but it can be justifiable even from the concept of justice alone.
Do you think that, I'm just going to put this out there, do you think that kind of concept of justice, is that subjective on your part or is that real?
But this is what we accept.
The desire to have someone else punished for doing you wrong.
The desire to have justice implemented is something that is ingrained within us.
Yeah.
This justice, even a 3-year-old, if you snatch something from them, a toy or something, they'll say, "Give it to me back." They'll start crying.
Yeah,
it's something inbuilt.
It's a human thing.
Sense, but you will say human, but we as Muslims say this is already given by God. The understanding, the notion of justice, that we appreciate and we understand what it is, so that we don't violate this justice. It's very important. We are told in the Quran, very, strictly, you have to stand forth as true witnesses, just witnesses, even if it goes against you, your own family, your kith and kin. This is how important and how paramount Islam considers the concept of justice. Even if it goes against you, doesn't matter. You have to speak and bear witness in truth. A true witness, a true justice, a just person. So the Prophet ﷺ, I'm sure it's quite well known, this statement, he said, even if Fatima, my daughter, was to steal, if she were to steal, of course she doesn't, then her hands should be chopped off, meaning no nepotism, no favoritism. Justice has to be meted out, not because someone is poor and you mete the justice out, and when someone is rich, as we see today in many cultures and many nations and many countries. If you are very powerful and if you're very rich and in a position of authority, you just get away from the hands of the law.
Let me ask you this. Do you think we could come up with a better system of justice for theft than chopping someone's hands off? Is there a better way to remedy the situation? So
personally, no.
You've stolen.
Personally,
someone else has been stolen from.
I'll tell you why. Personally, Islam is a holistic system. The system that it presents, you can call it the model of crime and punishment. This is what we say, you can't find a better system than that. Yeah, you can have many alternatives and you can see and you can implement those and you see which one. Because the principle of Islam is based on this issue, on what? Prevention is better than cure. And because of this principle, you will have certain punishments impeded out on certain crimes with an intention or motives of deterrent as well, a deterrent aspect. It tries to deter individuals to commit this action when everything is provided for. You don't need to, for example, if you are provided the means to sustain your life, to live your life and your family with nothing of reason for you to steal, why would you steal unless something wrong with you? Then you need to be educated. If you have no means to, if you have no reasons to steal, you're a rich person, why would you steal a bread? You have the money to pay for it, for example. What's wrong then if you're stealing a bread? there's something wrong. It's not your poverty.
It's
Something
your
clearly
brain.
not right.
It's your brain.
So Islam looks at all of these aspects and says, look, there has to be an education system where it imparts this knowledge and understanding from the very young age, where don't steal someone's bread when you don't have to.
This brings me to the point I was saying, is like, do you think this is the best system? And you touched on
Personally, yes.
a few things is why I would, I agree with most of the stuff you said about, earlier, but this is where we're starting to diverge.
It's only when you
a
look
bit.
at it holistically.
You said, would a rich person steal?
No, would a rich person steal a bread, a piece of loaf?
Well, it doesn't matter what it is.
No. Rich people steal a whole company.
How about this?
A whole
All right,
half a country.
Let's forget that. Shoplifting, something petty theft.
Yeah.
Would a rich person commit petty theft?
Yeah. Why would they do that?
The answer
Some people
is yes.
do. Yes, some people
Happens
do.
all the time.
Why?
They're fucked up in the head. That's why.
Just to use our languages,
Sorry.
Control way. Because of the cameras, people are listening. Young people may be listening. Okay. We're having a very nice discussion.
They're not well.
Okay. So the rich people are not very well. In here, something's wrong with their psyche. So Islam deals with these people as well from the very beginning.
Yeah, but
it
you
stops
said,
people.
you
Stops
said
them from
chopping of hands. I just don't. I don't think that's a good cure for mental imbalance.
No. This is an aspect of deterrence, right? A major aspect. When you have, you have to just look into practice. When Islam was implemented properly at that time with holistic laws, how many hands were chopped off? Not even a handful. Mind my pun. Not even a handful. Why? Because it made people, developed people, it improved people's understanding, their thinking, their thought processes, their emotional upbringing, and their physical upbringing, their intellectual upbringing.
That's an interesting point you bring up.
Because that's something that
we
needs to be looked at.
We could solve this. I don't know what countries are still chopping people's hands off for theft.
No country is implementing Islam in its entirety, so we can't really give an example.
It would be interesting to compare, say, maybe a Western country.
But we can't.
Incidents of theft with
you can, but it's not going to do proper justice. Why? Because the countries which are implementing this, punishment of chopping off the hands, are they totally holistically implementing everything else of Islam? You can't half implement Islam and expect that everything works together. That would be a major problem. But when it was implemented, that's the point we should go to. When at the time of Islamic golden age, there were a long period of golden age in the early Islamic history, how many hands were chopped off and why? What was happening within the individuals in the Muslim society where the rich weren't stealing, shoplifting, for example? What was it within them?
To be honest, to be fair, it's conjecture on what.
Not conjectural. This is something that you can study yourself.
Where can I study?
Islamic history. Islamic history, when it was implemented within, say, first, 700 years. Let's give that broad period. Why was it that this amount of punishment wasn't, actually carried out to that number that we think every second person or third person they're going to get their hands chopped off? But it didn't happen.
Let's go with this. I can kind of see where you're going with this. And if we wanted to prevent theft, if that was our goal, we would cut people's hands off. That would definitely. Sorry?
If we want to stop a crime like theft happening, then we have to have laws to deal with it. Now we need to determine what crime it is. In fact, I gave an example which is not even appropriate. Why? Stealing a loaf of bread will never, in an Islamic jurisprudence, get a penalty of cutting off hands. Why? It needs to be of a certain value, not value of a loaf. It needs to be something valuable. It needs to be protected. It needs to be hidden away and secure.
All right. Yeah, we're going to a different area, which we didn't touch on before.
Yeah, but that's the condition, though. That's the condition.
There are certain extreme forms of punishment for extreme crimes.
Yes. So what we're saying is
still debate. How about capital punishment? How do you feel?
How many capital punishments are there in Islam? In Islamic law?
Oh, it's not. I'm just saying in general.
No, in Islamic law, how many are there?
There's tons in the States. I'm just saying.
No, in Islamic law, there are about 5 or 6 of capital punishment crimes. Only out of zillions of possible crimes.
That includes Saudi Arabia.
No, I'm not talking about any country. I'm talking about from Islamic law, which is the basis of implementing a law in any Muslim country. So whether Saudi Arabia or Pakistan or Iran or whichever country it is, doesn't matter. If you're going to implement Islamic law, the Islamic law comes from the Quran and the prophetic teaching, and the understanding and the consensus of the Prophet's companions and then the students. And then there's an analogical deduction, what we call qiyas. So I've given you 4 sources of Islamic law already. Now, what we are saying is the crime and the punishment must go hand in hand. You can't punish with a chopping of hands with stealing a loaf of bread or a lollipop. Why? It doesn't have these conditions met. The conditions are quite strict. The strict is it needs to be hidden away and secured away. That means the person who is actually stealing, he is really someone not like a normal person who is trying to steal by breaking their lock or something, who has no need of and lots of these things.
You didn't say that before.
I thought you knew.
When I brought up the issue of the rich person who is a bit of an idiot and goes and steals
I assumed you knew because when
we
we
were
were discussing
they should get their hands. And this is wrong.
My apologies. I thought you understood.
That was my thing. Is there's a different approach to justice and mercy have to be weighed in a certain way, and it's not easy to achieve both.
Taking someone's life away for getting capital punishment is not something like a trivial matter.
No, it's not.
It's not trivial matter. Serious. So that's why this serious matter means the crime that they've committed is serious equally.
Yes.
So if you look at the crimes that carries out this capital punishment is actually something to do with this very, very grievous in the eyes of Islam. For example, highway robbery, where it's not stealing. Someone comes along in broad daylight and commits the theft and murder at the same time, where your whole life is unsecure. You cannot even live your life in public daylight where you're threatened for your security. These kind of crimes cannot be just £10 fine or 1 year imprisonment. Islam considers these are crime against society, where they need to have a very strict and harsh punishment to show to the individual that this is what will happen to you, as well as to the others who may be even thinking of doing that because of their, unwell mind. Let's put it that way, as we said. Not right.
The unwell mind is obviously all cases wouldn't be this way, but I'm talking about a bit of an impulse that you can't resist.
Some people, for example,
the cases are what do you do with a person who can't resist their impulse?
So if you look at it now, there are a lot of people who have these impulses of raping. They want to rape. They want to rape women who are not their wife or their girlfriend. They just want to rape. Okay, this impulse they have. Maybe they're psychopaths, or maybe they're conditions from the very young age of watching, all these movies or whatever, encouraging them to go about and actually trying it out and saying, even though person is not consenting, because rape is without consent, right? This is relationship without consent. Even though they're not consenting, they want to actually overpower this woman and to fulfill their desires. Now, how do we deal with these people? This conditioning didn't happen overnight. This is the Islamic understanding. These kind of mindset didn't happen just overnight, just like that. There may be one, two, few individuals who are actually psychopaths, where they will be trained and rehabilitated differently. They will be dealt with differently. But people at large, when you are coming up with this kind of impulses to carry out your impulse and forcibly enjoy yourself on others, these impulses, Islam considers, have been developed in a process of time, of conditioning by the society, the environment, lots of different factors. When we say environmental factors, it could be that the people they're hanging around with, bad influence. It could be they're watching the media, whether it's the internet or whether it's the TV or it's the movies in cinemas, where they're somehow seeing people are getting away with it. People are forcing each other, and it gives them this adrenaline rush. Maybe I can get away with it as well. In Islam, these kind of encouragement are prevented. We don't show open licentiousness, if I can use this word, I can't remember how it's pronounced, where, this open kind of thing about sexuality and sexual perversion or sexual immoralities, let's call it that way. There are certain sexual moral behavior and there are sexual immoral behavior. Islam doesn't even encourage this happening in society in any form, whether it's in school, college, university, workplace, whether it's the shops that you go to, the newspaper you read, the movie you see, it doesn't encourage that. So it tries to prevent this kind of thing happening and educates at the same time so that the individual is brought up in an understanding where no, you have no right and no business to overpower someone without their consent and their will, except when they're mutually agreeing in a form of marriage, for example.
Now, you know where I'm going to go with this. It seems that, you just tell me what you think. So obviously there's been a number, I think Sweden is one place where they're saying the Islamic community is raping a lot of the local girls and things like that. Is responsible for a lot of the rapes that are occurring in Sweden.
Okay. So, since Islam doesn't encourage them,
it would seem.
Are they following Islam?
Well, I don't know.
First question you'd be asking.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
first question you'd be asking. If Islam, it says, if you were to rape someone, you should be stoned to death. Obviously, these people are not even listening to that.
Yeah.
Yep. So it is not problem of Islam. It's problem of their Islamic understanding and application of Islam.
Well, I mean,
if they were doing it,
I bring it up.
Assuming this is.
I bring it up because you were talking about, Islam says that rapists tend to come out of their own culture, and that's reinforced by what they're taught in their culture. And I'm like, well,
but where are they learning?
These guys are in an Islamic culture, and then they're going out and raping. That doesn't seem to be.
When you say
Sweden,
is open pornography available everywhere in Sweden? Maybe there is. Maybe it is. Maybe they're conditioned by this openness of sexual immorality in our understanding.
Yeah,
and that is somehow conditioned.
Swedes don't seem to have that problem, and they have the same access to the porn. It seems that it's. I don't have figures on this.
I don't know these figures anyway. But
yeah, exactly.
Talking from assumptions.
The way the media is reporting it, and I will say that there must be some credibility.
I would say,
the numbers.
We need to look
the Swedes are not doing it, and the Muslims are, given the same access to the same pornography.
But obviously, clearly it's not a Muslim problem, or it's not an Islamic problem. It's a problem of certain individuals who are not applying Islam to them. And the question should be asked is, why aren't they applying Islam to them? What is conditioning them not to apply Islam to them when they are Muslims?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, but you're kind of just... And then
I'm not brushing it aside. I'm simply saying Islam is not the problem. Muslim who are not applying the application of Islam on them.
You're telling me if you don't apply moral principles to your life, then you don't act morally. And we can all say that. It doesn't seem that Islam is.
But that cannot be a counterexample, though. I mean, when you use this as a counterexample.
No, I was just saying that. I don't know. You kind of made it seem like Islam is giving something special that some special teachings the rest of us can't give, and that's why
Islam gives teaching which is far-reaching for everyone to even see and compare, accept, or do whatever your society wants to do. This is your society, but Islamic society has a particular framework, and based on that framework, the society should flourish, and at that point it did. The point the Islamic society came into decline is an interesting point to study. Why the Islamic society declined at one point, when it was the peak of civilization. We well know that at one point, Islamic society were peak of civilization where the East and the West, they were all going to that society to learn, to develop, to progress. They were declining for various factors. One of the important factors is their linking with Islam was getting broader and broader, meaning what? They were moving away from Islam and the application of Islam. So the desires overcame many of them. The rulers became corrupt, they corrupted the people. The people became corrupt, they corrupted the ruler. So you had a vicious circle of this corruption and non-application of Islam, and eventually it came to a point where it will crumble, and it did crumble. It's a very crude way of portraying the decline of the Islamic society, but this was one of the major points in the decline, where they were removing away from the Islamic teaching, Islamic ethos, Islamic application of its values, and that's why it declined. When it was applied, prosperity, whether you were a Muslim or non-Muslim in an Islamic state, everyone was prospering. The Jewish people were prospering, the Christian people were prospering. They were in higher status in the administration and so on. That happened because the holistic application was there. Today, we don't see this kind of thing happening because Islam is not applied holistically. That's the problem. Holistic application. For example, if you give your child all the money, says don't steal, and then he goes to a gang culture and says stealing gives you power and dominance. Like if I were to rob someone by force and so on, it makes me a very what's it called?
Call it juice in it.
I don't even know. Yeah. So it's not because of he's stealing of property. It's because of something else.
Stealing for power.
For power. So that's what. So we need to impart this teaching and this understanding to our youngsters as they grow up. Because we're not doing this enough, sufficient enough, and that's why people are growing up with minds which are, as you will say, messed up.
Ken's a good lad though.
Anyway, it's been nice talking to you.
Thanks.
We'll talk again. What's your name?
Ken.
Ken,
Yeah.
It's a pleasure speaking to you, and we can talk again.
Yeah.
And look into Islam, and especially on this issue about Islamic crime and punishment, and the conditions that are needed. And then you can see, because your concept of God, you're agnostic to it. But if there was a God, you would expect the God to be just and fair. And this is where you can link that. Okay?
All right.
Take care again.
See you.
See you later.